There is a room beneath St. Catherine's Convent that no one has entered for almost 3 centuries. A chapel sealed with brick and iron, marked with warnings, and locked by the authority of the church. Local people say that if you stand near it on a summer night, you can hear someone praying from the other side of the wall. Cold, slow, whispering words in a language no one speaks anymore. History tells us it was closed to protect the world from what happened inside. The church tells us nothing at all. But the letters found inside that chapel tell a very different story. They tell how one woman destroyed the silence of God. This is the story of Sister Marie-Thérèse Leclerc. The nun who said her child was a miracle. The woman who challenged the church. The woman who made Savannah afraid to ring its church bells at night. Now we open the door that was never meant to be opened. Part 1. Savannah in the year 1748 did not look the way it does today. The city was young. It smelled of river mud, sawdust, and smoke from cooking fires. Houses stood close to one another on narrow streets, and the sound of wagon wheels echoed through the early morning air. It was supposed to be a city built on noble ideals. A place where slavery was forbidden and equality was promised. But promises fade faster than paper in a storm. By 1748, plantations covered the riverbanks. Rice fields stretched as far as the eye could see. Hundreds of enslaved people worked under the sun from dawn to night. Wealth filled the pockets of plantation owners and church leaders. Savannah had become exactly what its founders said it never would. At the eastern end of town stood St. Catherine's Convent. Its limestone walls were bright under the Georgia sunlight. The building was large enough to be noticed and quiet enough to be feared. The convent served many purposes. It housed nuns devoted to religious life. It taught the daughters of wealthy families. It kept the church's documents, land agreements, and political secrets. Most importantly, it held power. Within those walls lived 18 nuns and 12 novices. There were students who came to learn how to read, to sew, to behave as proper Christian women. And there were 9 enslaved people who cleaned, cooked, tended the gardens, and cared for the daily operations of the convent. They moved through the halls like shadows. Present, necessary, and unseen. Among them was Thomas. He was 17. His hands were slim and careful. His face was calm and unreadable. He was not like the others. He could read. He could write. He knew how to copy texts with perfect letters, neat and straight like printed ink. A skill the convent used every day. He worked in the library where the air always smelled of candle wax and ink. He organized books. He copied letters. He delivered messages between the convent and the churches in town. He walked hallways that no other enslaved person was allowed to walk. The nuns grew comfortable with him there. They nodded when they passed him. They asked him to fetch papers and ink. They spoke near him without remembering he was listening. And someone was watching him closely. Her name was Sister Marie-Thérèse Leclerc. She had come from Quebec 7 years earlier. In her home country, her reputation was already strong. She was known as a woman of strict order, sharp discipline, and unshakable devotion. Her gray eyes saw everything. Her presence alone kept others silent. She never raised her voice. She did not have to. Mother Superior Josephine Beaumont requested her specifically to restore control to St. Catherine's. There had been rumors of lax discipline. Rumors of disobedience. Rumors that some of the younger nuns were forgetting their vows. Sister Marie-Thérèse was brought in to change all of that, and she did. Rules tightened. Prayer schedules were enforced. Confessions became more frequent. Any sign of disobedience was met with swift correction. The convent became quiet, still, controlled. The sisters began to follow her example. Eyes lowered, voices soft, movements careful. No one questioned her judgment. No one ever imagined that she was the one who would bring ruin to the convent she had saved. The summer of 1748 pressed down on Savannah like a heavy blanket. The air inside the convent was thick. The stone walls trapped heat. The sisters slept lightly at night. Many prayed late into the evening where it was slightly cooler and the candles flickered against the ceilings. This was when the first change appeared. Sister Marie-Thérèse's prayer schedule shifted. She no longer prayed at the same hours she always had. Instead, she prayed late. Very late. Long after the others had gone to their rooms. Sometimes she stayed in the chapel past midnight, kneeling alone before the altar. Her head bowed, her hands clasped, her body still as stone. At first, no one questioned her. She was the most devout among them. If she said she was called to deeper prayer, who would argue? But changes are noticed in close quarters. The nuns lived side by side. They shared every sound, every movement, every breath. The first crack in the silence appeared on the morning of October 3rd. Sister Agnes Fontaine entered the laundry room early. The air outside was cool and wet with morning dew. She began sorting garments when she saw a nightdress she recognized. Sister Marie-Thérèse's. Stained with blood, not old blood, fresh. Sister Agnes froze. Her heart beat fast against her ribs. She knew every woman in the convent. She knew every cycle, every change, every pain. She knew that Sister Marie-Thérèse had stopped bleeding years ago. She was 51. Her body had already passed that stage of life. This was not normal. This was not possible. She washed the garment. Not once. Not twice. 3 times. She hung it in the private drying room. Then she said nothing, because she did not know who to tell or what the truth would mean. 3 weeks later, the truth came for them all. During morning prayers, as the sisters knelt in silence, Sister Marie-Thérèse swayed. Her face grew pale, her eyes rolled upward, her body collapsed against the floor in front of the altar. Gasps filled the chapel. It was the first time any of them had ever seen her fall. Mother Superior Josephine ordered her to the infirmary. The convent's healer, Sister Catherine Mercier, performed an examination. She checked once, then again, then a third time, slower, more careful. Her hands trembled. Sister Marie-Thérèse was 3 months pregnant. And no one knew yet that Thomas had disappeared 2 nights earlier. If you want, I will now continue with part 2. Hook. There are moments in history when the truth should have remained buried. When silence would have been safer. When speaking the truth opened a door that could never be closed again. The day Sister Marie-Thérèse claimed her pregnancy was a miracle, Savannah began to whisper. But when the church sent investigators, when the physicians arrived, when the questions began, those whispers turned into something else. Something darker. Because the truth was not divine. It was human. And human truths can destroy more than faith. They can destroy lives. Now we enter the most dangerous part of the story. Part 2. The examination room in St. Catherine's Convent was quiet on the morning of October 28. The windows were drawn. The candles burned low. 3 physicians stood around Sister Marie-Thérèse, each one trained, educated, and respected. They asked no emotional questions. They simply did their work. They examined her carefully. They measured. They took notes. They spoke softly to one another, their voices hushed but firm. When they finished, they left the room and wrote their conclusion in precise handwriting. Sister Marie-Thérèse was 15 weeks pregnant. The pregnancy was normal. The child was healthy. There was nothing miraculous about it. The report spread through the convent like smoke. The interrogations began the next day. The convent's meeting room was cleared. A wooden table was placed at the center. Bishop Marcus Fenwick of Charleston arrived with Father Thomas Donnelly, who was known for uncovering the truths that others tried to hide. The sisters avoided the hallway where the meeting room stood. They walked past quickly, eyes lowered, as if passing a grave. For 11 hours a day, they questioned Sister Marie-Thérèse. How did this happen? When did this begin? Who was the father? Had she broken her vows? But she remained calm, her gaze steady, her voice clear. She told them she had kept her vows. She had never been alone with any man. She insisted her pregnancy was a blessing from God, a sign of divine favor, a gift granted to the pure of heart. The bishop listened. Father Donnelly listened. Sister Catherine listened. But no one believed her. On the 3rd day, Father Donnelly changed his method. He opened the convent's schedule logs. Records that documented the daily movements of every sister. Logs that Sister Marie-Thérèse had written herself. He traced her steps across months. He noted when she had changed her prayer hours. When she had spent long nights alone in the chapel. When she had spent unusual hours in the library. When she had requested entry into the storage chapel 17 times during the summer. Her explanations were steady. Her voice never faltered. She spoke of spiritual hunger, research, preservation of church documents. But then the bishop asked a question that filled the room with a silence that felt alive. "Sister, do you know a young man named Thomas?" For 3 seconds, she did not speak. 3 seconds in which the world seemed to tilt. Then she answered, "Thomas works in the library. I have assigned him copying tasks." "Why do you ask?" The bishop folded his hands. "Because Thomas has asked to speak with me. And what he has to say concerns you." The interrogations paused. The halls grew still. Even the air felt heavy. The bishop and Father Donnelly went to a small office where Thomas waited. Thomas stood with his shoulders straight but his hands shaking. His eyes were tired. His face looked older than 17. He explained that he had asked to speak because he could no longer remain silent. Not because he feared punishment, but because he feared what would come next if he did nothing. He told them everything. The idea had been hers. The planning had been hers. She had come to him in late spring, speaking with quiet certainty that God had chosen her to prove something to the world. To show that a woman could conceive without breaking her vows. That faith could overcome age. That the divine could reveal itself through her body. He had refused. Of course he had refused. He understood what would happen to him if anyone believed he had touched a nun. His life would end in violence. No explanation would save him. Even innocence has no power when the world has already chosen your guilt. But she offered him something no enslaved person could ignore. Freedom. She promised she would free him. She showed him a document she had already begun to prepare. She explained how to sign it, where to record it, which official in Savannah would bear witness. She made the impossible seem real. The procedure she described came from forbidden books in the library. French scientific writings. Experiments first done with animals. Transfer of reproductive material from male to female without physical contact. A syringe. A vessel. No touch. No act. A technical preservation of vows and an attempt to create something the church itself claimed only God could create. Thomas spoke slowly. His voice was unbroken but exhausted. He said that when he agreed, he believed he was helping her fulfill a sacred calling. He believed she truly wished to show the world something holy. He believed she meant to free him. But as her belly began to swell, her behavior changed. She prayed for longer hours. She walked the halls at night. She spoke of visions. She spoke of voices. She spoke of suffering. She said the child would not be like other children. She said the world would remember his birth for centuries. When Thomas finished speaking, the bishop remained silent. Father Donnelly asked one question. "Did you ever touch her?" Thomas shook his head. No, there was no need for more words. The bishop exhaled slowly. His eyes closed. His fingers pressed together in quiet dread. Because what Thomas had described was not a miracle. It was heresy, not only against the church, but against God. And the punishment for heresy was absolute. If you want, I will now write part 3. Just say, continue part 3. Hook. Some stories are whispered to protect the living. Others are buried to protect the dead. But there are a few stories that are hidden because the truth is too dangerous to face. This is one of those stories. When the church realized the nature of Sister Marie-Thérèse's pregnancy, they believed they could contain the scandal. They thought silence, confinement, and punishment would erase the truth. But the truth was already alive, growing, waiting, and the child had not yet been born. Part 3. The convent had become a place of fear. The nuns walked the halls with lowered eyes. Candles burned late into the night. Doors were locked that had never been locked before. It felt as if something unseen had taken residence in the walls, something breathing just out of sight. Thomas was held in a small room near the back of the convent. 2 guards watched the door at all times. Not to imprison him, but to keep him alive. Rumors had reached the city, and the city was hungry for punishment. Angry voices gathered outside the gates each evening, carrying torches, speaking of sin, corruption, and justice. Inside the convent, the tribunal continued its work. Sister Marie-Thérèse stood before the council, her hands folded over her swollen abdomen. Her face showed no fear, no shame, only certainty. She explained the final details of her experiment without hesitation. How she had prepared the locked storage chapel. How she had memorized the medical procedures. How she had performed the insemination herself while Thomas remained in a separate chamber. She had kept her body untouched. That was her defense. Her vow of physical chastity remained technically unbroken. The tribunal had expected guilt. They had expected tears. They had expected the collapse of a woman under the weight of her actions. Instead, they encountered faith sharpened into something dangerous. One of the priests asked, quietly, "Sister, are you proud of what you have done?" Her reply chilled the room. "I am honored. God chose me to reveal what others are too afraid to understand." The priests exchanged uneasy glances. The bishop leaned forward. "This was not God. This was your will." Sister Marie-Thérèse lifted her chin. "I am God's instrument. If God works through me, how can you claim my will is separate from His?" The bishop closed his eyes, as though the weight of her conviction made him physically ill. "Because pride speaks first," he said. "And pride is the oldest sin." The tribunal dismissed her and called for Thomas. Thomas entered with slow steps. His wrists were not bound, but his posture was that of a man carrying chains. He looked exhausted, as if sleep had abandoned him long ago. He spoke clearly. He told them exactly how Sister Marie-Thérèse had convinced him. He described the papers she had shown him. Papers that promised his freedom. Papers that he later discovered were worthless. He spoke of the risk, the fear, the hope, the betrayal. When he finished, the room was silent. Father Donnelly asked a final question. "Why speak now, Thomas? You know the danger. Confessing this could cost you your life." Thomas looked at the floor for a long moment. When he finally raised his gaze, his eyes were full of pain. "Because she lied to me. She made me believe I had a future. She put my life in danger for her dream. I will not die for her pride." The bishop nodded. There was nothing more to say. But outside the walls, the city moved closer to violence. Plantation owners spoke openly of taking Thomas by force. They believed he had seduced a nun. They did not care about truth. They wanted blood to protect tradition. That same night, a group of 23 men led by Harrison Devereux approached the convent gates. They shouted at the guards. They demanded Thomas be handed over. They claimed the church was hiding sin behind holy robes. The guards refused. A riot nearly began. Constables were called. Swords were drawn. Torches scattered sparks across the stone walls. It was only by the narrowest chance that bloodshed did not fill the convent courtyard that night. The tribunal met again at dawn. They could no longer delay. Their decision would determine the fate of 2 lives. Cardinal Hartley spoke the verdict aloud. Sister Marie-Thérèse would be removed from the order. She would be sent to a private residence in Charleston until the birth. After the child was born, it would be taken from her. She would never see it again. She would never return to religious life. She would be exiled. Thomas would be moved immediately. Not freed, but sold to a Catholic merchant in Boston. A place far from Savannah. A place where no one knew his name. He would live, but still as property, because the church feared that granting his freedom would expose the scandal further. The decision echoed through the chapel like a funeral bell. Sister Marie-Thérèse listened without expression. When the cardinal finished, she raised her head and asked one question. "What will you tell the world of this child?" The cardinal answered, "We will tell them the truth. A woman fell to pride. There was no miracle, only sin." Sister Marie-Thérèse smiled. A small, unsettling smile. "You may say that now," she said. "But when the child is born healthy to a woman who should no longer be able to conceive, when doctors confirm what nature should not allow, when the child grows strong and wise, when people see what stands before them, what will they believe then?" The cardinal did not answer. Because he had no answer. Something was happening beyond rules, beyond reason, beyond control, and the child had not even taken its first breath. If you want, I will now continue with part 4, where the child's birth draws something dark into Savannah. Just say, continue part 4. Part 4, Hook. People in Savannah whispered about many strange things in those years. But nothing spread faster than the rumor that a nun had become pregnant without ever touching a man. Some called it a miracle. Others called it witchcraft. Nobody knew the truth, but everyone felt the fear. Part 4. The morning after the tribunal delivered its judgment, the convent felt colder than it had ever felt before. The hallways were silent. The bells did not ring for morning prayer. The sisters walked with their eyes lowered, as if speaking aloud might bring the wrath of heaven down upon them. Sister Marie-Thérèse remained in her private chamber, guarded by 2 nuns who had been ordered to stay with her. They did not speak to her. They barely looked at her. Yet she seemed calm in a way that made everyone around her uneasy, as if she knew something they did not. Outside the walls, the city of Savannah boiled with anger. Word had already leaked. It always did. A slave had been used in some kind of strange ritual. A nun was pregnant. There was talk of her claiming it was a miracle. Plantations buzzed with outrage. Churches whispered about corruption. Taverns echoed with drunken shouts calling for justice. The convent was no longer a place of safety. It had become a spark in a field of dry grass. Thomas remained under guard in a storage cell near the courtyard. He slept little. Every sound in the night made him fear the door would break open and men with ropes would drag him into the streets. But the guards held firm. They had orders to protect him. Yet even they seemed afraid. Not of Thomas, but of what his presence meant. That evening, Bishop Fenwick met with Father Donnelly in his study. They spoke in low voices, though no one else was near. "What we do next decides the future of this church," the bishop said, rubbing his temples. He looked older than he had only weeks before. "If the public believes this child is unnatural, Savannah may riot. If they believe it is holy, the church loses control." Father Donnelly nodded. "The tribunal's ruling may not be enough. The people want certainty, but there is none," the bishop said. For a moment the room was quiet. Then there came a knock. A young novice entered, her hands shaking. "Bishop, the doctors have come to examine Sister Marie-Thérèse again. They say the pregnancy is progressing strangely." The bishop and Father Donnelly exchanged a look. They followed her. The doctors waited in the infirmary. They did not look confident. One of them, a respected physician known for calm logic, spoke in a low voice. "We are not sure how to explain what we are observing," he said. "The child appears larger than expected for this stage. The heartbeat is strong, too strong, and the mother, her body should not be sustaining this. She is 51, she had not bled in years. This is beyond normal medicine." Father Donnelly whispered one word. "Impossible," but the doctor shook his head. "No, not impossible, simply not understood." Sister Marie-Thérèse lay on the infirmary bed. Her hands rested again on her stomach, just as before the tribunal. She wore the same calm expression. "You see," she said softly, "God honors those who act with purpose." The bishop's voice finally rose. "This is not God. This is your doing." She looked up at him, her eyes clear and unwavering. "Do you truly believe God does not work through human hands? Through human minds? We are His instruments. Some of us simply choose to be used." The bishop stepped back. Her confidence unsettled him more than any accusation. The decision was made by nightfall. She would be escorted to Charleston in secrecy before sunrise. The fewer people who saw her, the less fuel there would be for the rumors. Thomas would be transported separately. He would be taken north under guard. The journey would begin the same night. He did not say goodbye to her. He did not want to. Whatever pity he had once felt had burned away. But as the guards prepared to move him, he heard something through the chapel walls. A faint sound, a voice singing. It was her. A hymn, soft and steady, a song of praise. But beneath the melody there was something else. Something like triumph. The guard at Thomas's side shivered. "She sings like she already won," he whispered. The convoy left the convent 2 hours before dawn. The air was heavy. Clouds hung low over the marsh. Every lantern flickered in the damp wind. They moved quietly through the streets, trying not to draw attention. But even silence cannot hide everything. From behind shutters and darkened windows, people watched. Some made the sign of the cross. Some spit on the ground. Some whispered prayers. At the edge of the city, where the first trees of the woods rose, Sister Marie-Thérèse turned her head and looked back at Savannah. She did not look afraid. She looked like someone who believed that history itself had begun to move because of her. The bishop watched her from his own carriage, his face pale. He feared many things. Public unrest, church scandal, the future of Thomas, the judgment of God. But what he feared most was the child. For if the child lived, it would be a symbol. Of what? He could not yet say. A miracle, a sin, a warning, a prophecy. But no matter what the church claimed, no matter what statements were written or denied, people would talk. And some would believe her. The child would be born. And no one could stop that now. If you'd like, I can now continue with part 5, where the child's birth draws supernatural and terrifying signs, and Charleston becomes the center of a growing dread. Just say, send part 5. Part 5, Hook. Sometimes a town can feel a warning before anyone says a word. The air grows heavier. The nights stretch longer. People wake up with a feeling that something is coming. That was Charleston in the autumn of 1748. A child was about to be born, and the world felt it before the first cry ever left its lungs. Part 5. The journey from Savannah to Charleston took 3 days. The group moved slowly, avoiding major roads, traveling before sunrise and after sundown to avoid attention. Sister Marie-Thérèse stayed inside a closed carriage, watched at all times by 2 church-appointed escorts. Thomas traveled separately, northbound with a merchant caravan, heading toward Boston. Their paths would never cross again. Storm clouds followed the carriage as though summoned. The sky remained a deep iron gray, and thunder rolled without rain. Horses refused to move at times, heads tossing as if sensing something unnatural. Even the guards, hardened men who rarely believed in superstition, murmured silent prayers. When they reached Charleston, the church placed Sister Marie-Thérèse in a private residence owned by a wealthy Catholic widow named Eleanor Vance. The house stood near the waterfront, surrounded by tall oaks that moved like dark curtains in the wind. The windows were shuttered. No one outside the church knew who the woman inside was or why she had been brought there. The official story was that she was a visiting nun recovering from illness. But secrets have a way of breathing through walls. The midwife assigned to her was a quiet woman named Sarah Kemp. Sarah was not Catholic. She belonged to the Anglican Church and lived simply. She had delivered many children, including infants born to women believed to be too old, too frail, or too broken to bear them. Her hands were steady, her heart observant. When she first entered the room where Sister Marie-Thérèse sat, she paused. The nun was kneeling by the window, hands resting gently on her stomach, humming that same soft hymn Thomas once heard. The air around her felt unusually warm, as if the fireplace had been burning though it had not. Sarah approached and introduced herself. Sister Marie-Thérèse smiled. "You were chosen well," she said softly. Sarah did not know what she meant, and she did not ask. Weeks passed. The pregnancy progressed faster than expected. Too fast. By early December, the child moved with surprising strength. Sarah sometimes felt its limbs through the stomach wall, firm and powerful. The heartbeats were loud. Once, while Sarah listened with a wooden horn, she heard 2 rhythms. Then 1. Then 2 again. She said nothing to anyone. Outside the house, Charleston's mood shifted. Animals grew restless at night. The tide came in higher than usual, flooding small docks and creeping up stone streets. A sickness spread among the cattle outside town. People began to speak of omens. Inside the residence, Sister Marie-Thérèse prayed constantly. But these were not the quiet prayers of repentance. These were prayers of triumph. She whispered to the child, calling it by no name, but speaking to it as if it already understood her. "You are the proof," she murmured. "You are the sign that faith can shape creation." The bishop arrived 2 weeks before the due date. He stayed in Charleston in another house, watching from a distance, avoiding the public. He had come because he feared the moment of birth. He needed to see the child for himself. One evening, he visited the house. Sarah and Eleanor Vance showed him into the room where the nun rested. The bishop stood over her bed. His voice was quiet. "Do you understand what will happen when the child is born? The church will deny your claims. They will not allow you to speak." Sister Marie-Thérèse looked up at him with a calm expression. "They can deny a story," she said. "They cannot deny a body that breathes." The bishop felt something cold rise in his chest. Not anger. Fear. He left without another word. That night the wind changed. It came in from the sea, heavy and warm, carrying the smell of salt and lightning. The shutters rattled, the oaks groaned, the house chimed with creaks and whispers in the wood. Before dawn, Sarah woke to the sound of Sister Marie-Thérèse calling her name. "It is time." Sarah hurried to the room. Eleanor fetched water. Candles were lit. The bishop was sent for but had not yet arrived. The labor began. At first, it followed the natural rhythm Sarah knew well. But soon, the room felt strange. The candle flames burned straight and tall, unmoving, untouched by the draft. The air felt thick. The walls seemed to press inward. The child moved with unnatural strength. Sarah tried to focus. Sweat gathered on her brow. She whispered steady, familiar instructions. But the nun did not cry out. Not once. Her face was serene. Her eyes remained open, watching, as if she had seen this moment long before it ever came. When the final moment arrived, Sarah positioned her hands and told the nun to push. The candles flickered all at once. The room went silent, even the wind outside paused. And the child entered the world. But the silence did not break with a cry. The baby did not scream. It breathed in deeply, calmly, as though already accustomed to life. Its eyes opened. They were dark, too dark, and it looked around the room with awareness. Sarah froze. Eleanor crossed herself, trembling. Sister Marie-Thérèse smiled. "Welcome," she whispered. The bishop burst through the door moments later. His eyes fell upon the child. His breath caught. He stepped backward without meaning to. No deformities, no wounds, no signs of illness, but something else, something unexplainable, a presence, a weight, a knowing gaze. The bishop whispered a prayer under his breath. Sister Marie-Thérèse reached out her arms for the child. But Sarah hesitated. Something inside her, ancient and instinctive, screamed not to place the child in the mother's arms. The baby turned its head toward her, watching. Not crying, not afraid, just watching. And the house went silent. Outside, the tide began to rise. Again, higher than before, as if the sea had been called. If you want me to continue the terror and growing tension, just say. Send Part 6. Part 6. Hook. Some children enter the world crying. Others arrive silent, watching. And sometimes that silence is louder than any scream. In Charleston, people would later say the moment the child was born, the wind changed. The tide rose, and a presence settled over the city that felt ancient. Part 6. The room remained completely still after the birth. Sarah stood frozen with the infant in her hands. The baby did not cry. Its eyes were open, dark and deep, looking at everything. Eleanor Vance pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. The bishop stared at the child as if seeing something he did not have words for. Sister Marie-Thérèse sat up slowly. Her face glowed with pride and something else. A quiet certainty. She extended her arms. "Bring the child to me." Her voice was soft, but Sarah hesitated. Every instinct told her something about this moment was wrong. The baby was too calm, too aware. Sarah felt watched by those small eyes. It was as if the child understood what was happening. As if it had arrived with memory already in place. The bishop stepped forward. "Give the child to the mother." His tone left no room for refusal. Sarah slowly placed the infant into Sister Marie-Thérèse's arms. The baby relaxed against her chest. No wail, no flinch, just quiet breathing. Sister Marie-Thérèse whispered, "My beautiful gift. You are the promise fulfilled." The bishop turned away and closed his eyes. He could feel something like pressure behind his ribs. Not pain, not fear, something heavier. A knowing that whatever this was could not be undone. Outside, thunder rolled across the harbor. The tide crept over the docks and flooded the streets nearest the water. People in Charleston opened their doors to find the ocean rising where it had no business being. Inside the house, the baby slept. But its sleep was not normal. Its breathing was too even, too measured, and when it did open its eyes, it did not move like a newborn. It watched. That night, Sarah stayed in the house. She could not leave. It was as if the walls themselves were holding her there. She slept lightly in a chair beside the bed. At some point before dawn, she woke to the sound of humming. The same melody she had heard before. Sister Marie-Thérèse sat upright, holding the child. Her eyes were open, but she did not seem awake. Her voice floated softly through the room. The child stared at her face, unblinking. Sarah felt a chill move across her arms. She whispered, "Sister, you need to rest." The humming stopped. The nun turned her head slowly, calmly. "Rest is for those who are finished with their purpose." Sarah had no answer. The days that followed grew stranger. The baby never cried. Not once. It slept only in short moments and spent most of the time awake, watching. Every time Sarah or Eleanor entered the room, the baby's eyes followed them. After 3 days, the bishop called a private meeting with Eleanor and Sarah in the kitchen. "We must move quickly. The child must be taken to a Catholic family within the month. No one in Charleston can know the circumstances of its birth. If this story spreads, the consequences will be beyond our control." Sarah swallowed hard. "There is something wrong," she said quietly. "Or something different." The bishop nodded. His voice was low. "I have seen children born marked by God. And I have seen children born marked by darkness. I do not yet know which this is. But we must act as though the world is listening." Meanwhile, word had already begun to seep through the neighborhood. Servants whispered. Fishermen spoke of the strange tides. A midwife who slept at the house. A visiting priest. A secret pregnancy. And a child who did not cry. Rumor moves faster than any story written by hand. Children began waking in the night, telling their parents of dreams where something watched from the water. Dogs refused to walk near the house. The church bells rang at odd times, as if pulled by invisible hands. The bishop ordered the house sealed to visitors. Guards stood outside day and night. But whispers traveled through Charleston like smoke. Questions rose. Who was the woman inside? Why did the bishop stay so close? Why did the church look afraid? Meanwhile, Sister Marie-Thérèse had changed. She no longer spoke softly. Her eyes held a burning certainty that frightened even Eleanor. She walked the house at night, her bare feet silent against the floorboards, speaking prayers that did not sound like prayers at all. Sometimes Sarah heard her speaking Latin, but not the Latin used in church. Older, rougher, words shaped as if from forgotten places. One night, Sarah followed the sound of the voice to the room with the child's cradle. Sister Marie-Thérèse stood over the cradle, whispering, "You were chosen. You are the proof. You will change the world. They will fear you, but they cannot stop you." The baby looked up at her. Not like a child watching a mother, but like an equal listening to someone speak. Sarah stepped backward and nearly cried out. The next morning, the bishop made his decision. The child must be moved tomorrow. He said it quietly, but everyone in the room understood the urgency. But it was too late. That evening, as the sun dipped below the water, a crowd gathered outside the house. Dozens of people, some curious, some afraid, some angry. They carried lanterns and spoke of unnatural things. Of sins, of signs, of a child that should not exist. They did not shout. They did not break down the door. They simply waited, as if they expected something to happen. Inside, the house grew unbearably silent. The bishop stood in the hallway with a candle. Sarah held the baby close, for the first time feeling fear like ice in her lungs. Sister Marie-Thérèse remained calm, hands clasped, eyes shining with strange pride. She whispered, "They came to witness." Outside, the ocean roared. The tide surged again, water running through the streets like veins. The child opened its eyes. And the candle flames leaned toward it. As if drawn, the house breathed in, and the night held its breath. If you want the tension to break in Part 7, just say. Part 7. Hook. Some places remember what people try to forget. They hold the screams, the whispers, and the secrets that were never meant to be seen. And when someone finally comes close to the truth, those places wake up. The night had settled heavy over the valley. The old manor looked even larger in the darkness, like a giant made of broken stone and rotted wood. Clara stood at the edge of the yard, staring at the windows. They looked like black eyes watching her. She could feel something waiting inside. Something that already knew her name. The wind carried a faint sound. It was not from any animal she knew. It was a thin voice, soft and slow. It sounded like someone humming a lullaby that did not belong to children. Clara stepped forward. Her boots crunched over the dry grass. Every step felt like she was walking farther away from safety. But she had come too far to turn back now. She had seen the old records. She knew that this house once belonged to the Harrow family. The same family that disappeared without a trace 30 years earlier. Everyone in town pretended nothing had happened. They called it a tragedy. A sad thing, but not a mystery. Clara knew better. She had seen too much. The front door was half open. It moved gently in the wind. She touched it and it made a slow sound like a quiet groan. Inside, the air smelled old and thick, like dust mixed with something sharp. Something like iron. She held her candle up. The small light pushed away just enough darkness for her to see the hall. Torn wallpaper. A long staircase. A portrait of a woman whose face had been scratched away. Only her eyes remained. They stared at Clara with something like anger. Clara swallowed hard and walked deeper inside. Somewhere above her, a door closed on its own. She froze. Her heart beat fast, loud enough she could hear it in her ears. But she forced herself to continue. She climbed the steps, one slow step at a time. The wood creaked under her weight. The house felt alive, watching, breathing. At the top of the stairs, she found a hallway. There were doors on each side, all slightly open. It looked like someone had left each room in a hurry. As she walked past the first door, she felt cold air sweep against her cheek. She turned the candle toward the room. A rocking chair moved slowly in the corner. But there was no one in it. Clara whispered to herself, maybe the wind, maybe just the wind, but she did not believe it. She continued toward the far end of the hall. The humming sound grew louder. And now it did not sound like a lullaby. It sounded more like crying. She reached a door that was fully closed. Her hand shook as she placed it on the handle. When she turned it, the crying stopped. The room inside was dark. Her candle showed a crib in the center of the floor. But there was no baby. Only a small bundle of blankets. Clara stepped closer. The blankets slowly began to move. She gasped and stepped back. The blanket opened. Inside was a small wooden doll. Its eyes were painted black and its mouth was sewn shut with thread. Clara felt her skin crawl. She turned to leave, but the door closed behind her. The candle flickered. A breath touched her ear. She spun around. No one was there. The house whispered, "Leave," but Clara could not. She needed answers. She forced herself out of the room and down the stairs. As she reached the bottom, she saw something new. A path of footprints across the dusty floor. Small footprints. Too small for any adult. They led toward the back of the house. The humming returned. It came from below her feet. The basement. Clara had never feared a place as much as she feared that basement. But she followed. The door to it was partly hidden behind a curtain. She opened it, and a wave of cold air rushed past her as if something inside had been waiting to escape. She stepped down the stairs. The wood steps felt damp. The air smelled stronger now. The smell of iron. The candle light shook as she reached the bottom. There were shelves filled with jars. Jars filled with dark liquid. And floating shapes. She looked closer. Small hands. Small feet. Faces that looked almost real. Clara felt sick and stumbled backward. The humming grew louder. The shadows in the corner moved. A figure stepped forward. It wore a long dress, stained and torn. Its hair hung over its face. But Clara recognized it from the portrait upstairs. It was the woman from the Harrow family. The mother. She spoke, but her voice sounded like wind over broken glass. "We never left. We were taken." Clara could not move. Her legs felt like stone. The woman lifted her hand and pointed toward the shelves. "They wanted our children. They promised protection. They lied." Clara shook her head. She did not understand. The woman stepped closer. Her face came into the candle light. It was pale and cracked, like old wax. Her eyes were empty. "You opened the door. Now they see you too." Clara dropped the candle. The flame went out. Darkness swallowed everything. She felt hands, small and cold, grab her from every side. And the humming rose into a scream. End of part 7. Hook. What if the most sacred walls you trusted hid secrets so dark they could destroy a community? Behind the limestone walls of St. Catherine's Convent, history's deadliest whispers were about to roar. Sister Marie-Thérèse's story didn't end with exile, it had only just begun. What followed would shock Savannah, shake the church, and blur the lines between faith and obsession. Part 8. The autumn wind carried a chill through Savannah, rustling the Spanish moss over cobblestone streets. By late November, the city had grown tense, whispers spreading like wildfire. Everyone knew about Sister Marie-Thérèse, the nun who had claimed divine pregnancy, and everyone knew about Thomas, the enslaved boy who had dared to speak the truth. Though Sister Marie-Thérèse had been confined to a private residence in Charleston, Savannah refused to forget. Rumors swirled about her child, a miracle or a scandal, depending on who was speaking. The convent's nuns feared that the walls they had trusted to protect their secrets could no longer contain the story. Meanwhile, Thomas sat in his new quarters in Boston, still enslaved but far from the mobs of Savannah. He could breathe, but the weight of betrayal clung to him. He had done what he thought was right. He had revealed the truth. And yet, the young man could not shake a growing fear. Sister Marie-Thérèse was not done. Back in Charleston, Sister Marie-Thérèse adjusted to life in her confinement. She was allowed limited contact with the outside world, but her mind raced. The child inside her grew, and with it, a purpose she refused to abandon. This was more than a personal triumph. It was a challenge to the very principles that bound society, religion, and science together. Letters passed secretly between Sister Marie-Thérèse and a small circle of trusted supporters. They discussed her plans, careful not to alert the clergy watching her every move. Among them were two women who had once been students at St. Catherine's, now married into prominent families, and a physician who had previously supplied her with medical equipment. Their loyalty was not just to her, but to the idea that the impossible could be proven. By early December, Sister Marie-Thérèse's health had stabilized. The pregnancy progressed normally, baffling doctors who continued to correspond discreetly with colleagues in Charleston. Reports arrived daily, documenting her unusual endurance and the child's healthy development. Even skeptical physicians could not deny the impossibility of her condition. Savannah, meanwhile, descended into superstition and fear. Plantation owners feared that divine judgment had come upon the city. Mothers warned their daughters to avoid convents entirely. Churchgoers debated endlessly whether the child represented God's blessing or a punishment for human arrogance. Within the convent, the nuns struggled with their own divided loyalties. Some could not forgive Sister Marie-Thérèse's audacity, viewing her as a threat to their sacred vows and safety. Others secretly admired her courage, believing that her faith had transcended the natural world. The tension was palpable. Every glance, every whispered word carried the weight of unspoken fear. Then, a new danger appeared. Letters intercepted by the Archbishop suggested that a faction of local men intended to confront Sister Marie-Thérèse in Charleston. They were determined to stop what they called a blasphemous abomination before the child was born. Rumors of violent plots reached the tribunal overseeing her confinement. The church acted swiftly. Guards were stationed around her residence, and any visitor had to pass through layers of scrutiny. Yet Sister Marie-Thérèse seemed unafraid. Her calm presence unnerved even the soldiers, as if the authority she had wielded at the convent now extended beyond walls and time. One night, a courier arrived with a message from Thomas. He wrote cautiously, aware of the church's watchful eyes. He admitted fear, confessed doubts, but also warned of growing threats to both their lives. Sister Marie-Thérèse read the letter by candlelight, her face illuminated with determination. She replied, urging him to remain safe, to wait, and to trust in what was coming. Her words carried a chilling undertone. Sister Marie-Thérèse had begun preparing for a moment that no one could predict. The birth would be her statement, her triumph over those who doubted, and a proof that neither age, gender, nor societal rules could bind divine will when faith and knowledge combined. As Christmas approached, the city of Charleston grew increasingly restless. Church leaders debated how much of the truth could safely be revealed to the public. Fear of scandal clashed with the need to maintain authority. Each day, letters from physicians and advisors reminded them that Sister Marie-Thérèse's case defied all precedent. Inside her room, Sister Marie-Thérèse continued her rituals. She prayed at dawn and dusk, recorded her observations, and meticulously prepared for the delivery. She spoke often to the unborn child, whispering promises that transcended human comprehension. She believed, with unshakable certainty, that what was coming would redefine faith itself. Outside, Thomas remained in the shadows of history, his role almost erased, yet crucial. He had participated in an experiment centuries ahead of its time. His silence, survival, and distant vigilance ensured that Sister Marie-Thérèse's plan could unfold without interference. The stage was set. By late December, Sister Marie-Thérèse had reached the final month of her pregnancy. The world outside Charleston's walls teetered between awe and terror, anticipation and dread. And within those walls, a quiet, almost imperceptible tension built. Something extraordinary was about to occur, something that would force every observer, clergy, layperson, and historian alike, to question the boundaries of nature, religion, and human audacity. But what would that birth bring? A miracle, a scandal, or a darkness no one could anticipate? The answer lay in the coming days, when history itself would tremble at what the convent had begun, a story that would echo for centuries. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit like and share it with someone who loves historical mysteries. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for Liturgy of Fear, because the next part reveals the shocking moment that changed everything. And I want to know, what do you think the child will be like? Drop your theory in the comments. If you want, I can write part 9 next with the dramatic reveal of the birth and its immediate consequences, keeping it equally gripping for your YouTube audience. Do you want me to do that? Hook. What happens when faith, science, and obsession collide? Sister Marie-Thérèse's secret was about to explode into a reality that no one in Savannah, or the church, was prepared to face. The birth of her child would shatter conventions, ignite fear, and leave a mark on history that would echo for centuries. Part 9. December in Charleston was damp and cold, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of Savannah. The city's streets were crowded with merchants preparing for the holiday season, but in the quiet corner where Sister Marie-Thérèse was confined, only tension and anticipation filled the air. The time had come. For months, she had prepared for this moment with meticulous care. Every ritual, every prayer, every precaution had been calculated to ensure the birth could occur safely and without interference. Her room was arranged as if it were both a chapel and a laboratory, blending the sacred with the practical. Candles lined the walls, illuminating medical instruments she had acquired and sanitized herself. Notes and diagrams detailing the procedure were tucked into drawers, a silent testament to her determination. Word of the impending birth had begun to reach select members of the church, though only a handful were aware of the full truth. Cardinal Hartley, still overseeing from afar, had dispatched clerics to ensure no unauthorized witnesses approached. Guards watched the residence day and night, not to restrict her, but to protect the church from scandal and herself from those who might see her child as a threat. The night before the birth, Sister Marie-Thérèse lay awake, hands pressed over her belly. She whispered prayers, but they were unlike any conventional devotion. She spoke to the child within, describing the world it would enter, the trials it might face, and the legacy it would carry. She claimed, with unwavering certainty, that the child would prove her vision of faith intertwined with reason, proving that miracles could exist alongside science. In the early hours of December 28, the first signs began. Sister Marie-Thérèse called for the attending physician, Dr. Robert Drayton, who arrived with 2 assistants. They were tense but professional, accustomed to the unusual but not the impossible. Her contractions were strong, rhythmic, but her calmness unnerved them. They had never encountered a woman at her age delivering a child, much less under circumstances so unprecedented. Hours passed. Candlelight flickered against the stone walls. Outside, Charleston slept unaware of the momentous event unfolding within the small residence. Inside, each breath, each cry of effort was a note in a symphony that balanced between life and fear. Sister Marie-Thérèse did not scream. She did not panic. She instructed calmly, guiding the assistants with an authority that matched her years as head of discipline. Finally, as dawn broke, the cries of a newborn pierced the stillness. A healthy infant emerged, a boy, breathing, wailing, and undeniably alive. The physicians and assistants exchanged astonished glances. Dr. Drayton, a man who had witnessed countless births, refused to speak for several minutes, simply observing the child. This was not merely unusual. This was impossible by every standard of contemporary medicine. Sister Marie-Thérèse held her son, the weight of him tangible in her arms, the culmination of months of planning, prayer, and study. Her expression was serene, almost triumphant. She whispered his name, a quiet declaration that the child was both proof and defiance. The news could not be contained for long. Even with guards stationed outside, word traveled quickly through the city's networks. Church officials were summoned immediately. Cardinal Hartley, Father Donnelly, and several senior clerics arrived to witness the child firsthand. Their reactions were a mixture of awe, disbelief, and fear. How could this be? Every medical and theological argument they had rehearsed crumbled in the presence of a living, healthy infant born to a 51-year-old nun. The child's birth ignited debates, whispers, and rumors. Some claimed a divine miracle had occurred. Others saw it as a dangerous manipulation, a deliberate blasphemy that challenged God's law. Even the physicians, sworn to observe without bias, admitted privately that they could offer no natural explanation. Meanwhile, Sister Marie-Thérèse's mind turned to Thomas. He had played a critical role in the months of preparation, and now the child was alive. She knew the boy remained in Boston, safe but unaware of the extraordinary outcome. She began writing letters, carefully worded, urging him to trust her vision and wait for the time when the child and he would meet, when history itself would understand what had been accomplished. But danger still lingered. Plantation owners in Savannah were furious, convinced that her audacity threatened the moral fabric of the colony. Letters intercepted by church couriers suggested plots to remove the child forcibly, to punish both mother and infant. Charleston's authorities reinforced security, but fear was now a constant companion. Within the residence, Sister Marie-Thérèse considered the future. The child would grow, not as the offspring of scandal but as a symbol of possibility. He represented a new understanding, a bridge between faith and reason, defying centuries of assumption. She knew that keeping him safe would require cunning, influence, and the continued silence of those who understood the truth. The day after the birth, a group of nuns secretly visited her, bearing gifts and prayers. They had risked everything to witness the miracle, and many left shaken, unsure how to reconcile their faith with what they had seen. The child's cry had penetrated their doubt, but the method of his conception remained hidden. Only Sister Marie-Thérèse and a handful of allies truly knew the story. By New Year's Eve, Charleston itself had begun to whisper. The impossible birth had become legend before it could become public knowledge. The church moved to control the narrative, acknowledging the child's existence but downplaying the circumstances. To the public, he was a curious anomaly, a prodigy of nature perhaps, but the true story, scientific, manipulative, miraculous, remained sealed behind closed doors. As the months passed, Sister Marie-Thérèse devoted herself to the child. She taught him prayers, readings, and the lessons she believed would prepare him to carry the weight of history. He was strong, intelligent, and unnervingly perceptive for his age. Those who observed him quietly remarked that he seemed destined for extraordinary influence, though none could articulate why. Yet even as the child thrived, shadows loomed. Thomas's future remained uncertain, the colony of Savannah simmered with anger, and the church knew that one misstep could turn their secret into a scandal that would shake the Atlantic colonies. Sister Marie-Thérèse had won a personal victory, but the consequences of her actions were far from over. And deep in Charleston, behind the walls where history and her ambition collided, she whispered to the child every night, "The world may doubt you, fear you, even try to destroy you, but you are the proof that limits exist only in the minds of those unwilling to challenge them." The final test was approaching. The world had yet to see the full impact of what she had accomplished. And when it came, it would forever alter the story of faith, science, and the power of human audacity. CTA for YouTube. If this story shocks you, hit like and share it with someone who loves dark historical mysteries. Subscribe to Liturgy of Fear and turn on the bell so you don't miss the final chapter. And I want to hear from you. What do you think will happen to the child now that he exists? Comment below with your theory. I can now write part 10. the final chapter, with a dramatic conclusion and a strong call to action for your YouTube audience, wrapping up the entire saga. Do you want me to do that next? Hook. After centuries, the truth finally emerges. Sister Marie-Thérèse's child is born, the impossible has happened, and the world around them trembles. Secrets, faith, ambition, and fear collide in a story that no one in Savannah, or the Church, will ever forget. This is the shocking conclusion to the saga that began in the walls of St. Catherine's Convent. Part 10 Final Chapter. The winter of 1749 in Charleston was harsh, the cold wind whipping along the cobblestones, carrying whispers of scandal and awe. Inside Sister Marie-Thérèse's guarded residence, a fire burned steadily in the hearth, casting long shadows on walls lined with books, instruments, and prayers. The child she had brought into the world grew quickly, already displaying an intelligence and calmness that unnerved the adults around him. Sister Marie-Thérèse watched him closely. Every movement, every look, every expression felt purposeful, as if he understood far more than a child of months should. She whispered to him daily, teaching him faith, history, language, and the mysteries of the world she had spent decades exploring. The child listened with wide eyes and a quiet attentiveness that left visitors questioning whether he was ordinary at all. News from Savannah remained tense. Plantation owners still murmured about the blasphemous birth, and some had even suggested traveling to Charleston to confront her. Yet the city's authorities, fearful of public outcry and scandal, did everything to keep the child safe. Church leaders continued their delicate balancing act, acknowledge the birth but obscure the circumstances. To the world, he was a curiosity, a child born under extraordinary but unexplained conditions. Despite this, Sister Marie-Thérèse knew the truth could not stay hidden forever. The letters she had written, the scientific texts she had studied, and Thomas's knowledge of the procedure, all these elements were powerful and dangerous. If exposed, they could ignite a firestorm that might destroy everything she had achieved. And yet, she did not fear exposure. She had planned for this, knowing that time and patience could shape perception as much as truth. Thomas, now in Boston, received occasional letters detailing the child's growth and health. Though separated by miles, he remained invested in the child's welfare. The knowledge that he had been manipulated still gnawed at him, but the child's survival brought a strange comfort. The boy represented something beyond pride, vengeance, or fear. He represented possibility. Sister Marie-Thérèse's days followed a strict routine. She nurtured the child, recorded observations of his physical and mental development, and maintained correspondence with a network of scholars and sympathetic clergy who understood the significance of her actions. She believed that her son would one day prove that faith and reason could coexist in ways the world had never imagined. The first public acknowledgement of the child came unexpectedly. During a routine visit by a local clergyman, a servant accidentally allowed the child to appear in the doorway. Word of a healthy infant born to a woman considered too old to conceive spread immediately. People whispered about the miracle, some in awe, others in fear. It became impossible to deny his existence, and with that, rumors of the extraordinary circumstances behind his birth began to circulate. Church officials scrambled to manage the narrative. They reinforced security, guided visitors carefully, and issued statements that described the child as an unusual blessing of nature rather than a divine miracle or scandalous experiment. Yet, as letters and word of mouth traveled, whispers persisted. Some wondered if Sister Marie-Thérèse had defied natural law, and others claimed that perhaps she had indeed been chosen by God for something extraordinary. Inside the residence, Sister Marie-Thérèse observed these reactions with quiet satisfaction. Her purpose had always been clear: to demonstrate that devotion, intelligence, and courage could create something beyond ordinary comprehension. She did not seek fame or recognition, only the validation of her vision and the safety of her child. Months passed, and the child grew rapidly, thriving against expectations. He walked early, spoke with clarity, and exhibited an awareness of his surroundings far beyond normal. Visitors commented on his presence, describing him as mesmerizing, almost otherworldly. Sister Marie-Thérèse encouraged his natural curiosity, teaching him lessons that blended spirituality, science, and ethics. Yet even in this sanctuary, danger remained. Letters reached her warning that the story had stirred fear and anger across the colonies. Some men sought to confront her, and some authorities feared the potential consequences if the public learned the full truth. Thomas's role in the original experiment remained a secret, but even that fragile secrecy carried risk. Sister Marie-Thérèse responded with calculated determination. She ensured that her child would remain protected, educated, and prepared for a world that might never fully understand him. She corresponded carefully with allies, reinforcing their loyalty and securing resources that would sustain them. Her careful planning ensured that, even if the past caught up with them, the child would survive. Years later, the child would grow into a figure of intelligence and influence, but during these earliest months, he was a symbol of her ambition, her faith, and her audacity. He represented the possibility of transcending human limitation, defying expectation, and challenging convention. Sister Marie-Thérèse knew that this story, hidden behind walls and protected by secrecy, would echo for centuries, a reminder of what courage and vision could achieve. In the quiet of the night, she whispered to him, "You are proof that limits are illusions, that faith and knowledge can coexist, and that history itself can be rewritten by those brave enough to try." Outside, the world slept, unaware that a child had been born who would force it to reconsider everything it believed possible. And in that moment, Sister Marie-Thérèse understood that while her exile, her scandal, and her secrecy had isolated her, they had also preserved her legacy. The impossible had occurred. She had challenged the Church, defied nature, and given life to something that would endure beyond her. And that, she knew, was the ultimate victory. YouTube call to action. If this shocking story of faith, science, and human audacity captivated you, hit the like button, share it with a friend who loves dark historical mysteries, and don't forget to subscribe to Liturgy of Fear. Comment below, what do you think happened to Sister Marie-Thérèse's child as he grew up? I read every theory.